Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 69. I have noticed over my years of working as a marriage coach that many people who email me or hop on a consult with me or become a client of mine refer to me as a therapist, or they make it clear in one way or another that they don't understand that there's a difference between a therapist or counselor and a coach, right? Let alone what the difference is and which is better for their particular goals. So I imagine that many of you listening have the same confusion. And so today I want to help clarify, help you understand if coaching or therapy/counseling is the better option for your goals. First, I want to clarify a couple terms. So throughout this episode, when I say therapy or therapist, I'm referring to really a variety of modalities that are practiced by people who have a mental health degree of one form or another. And they will oftentimes call themselves a psychotherapist, a counselor, a mental health counselor, or a therapist, or just a therapist, right? Or even a psychologist or a psychiatrist, right? Now, a psychiatrist is a little different. It's the only one of all of these mental health professionals who can prescribe medicine, right? And I'm not going to get into any more about that today. But I'm going to refer to this whole field, all of these titles, right, as therapy or as a therapist, right? People who practice this as a therapist, just to keep it simple for this episode today. But no, there are subtle differences in different terms that people use, or licenses even. Okay, so that's therapy and the therapist. And when I say a coach or coaching, on the other hand, I'm referring to someone who may go by the title of life coach or weight coach or relationship coach or health coach or a variety of other coaches. I'm not referring to sports coaches, although there's some similarities. It's different, right? As you can see from this, right? Like coaches are often very specifically specialized, where mental health counselors or therapists tend to be a little broader in their scope. So that's one of the differences. So you'll hear me say coach and coaching, that's one field. And you'll hear me say therapy and therapist, that's that whole other first field we were talking about. Now, really important here, one of them is not better than the other. They both have their place and can both be amazingly effective at their different goals. And caveat here, the difference isn't always as cut and dry as I might make it sound. We're just going to do our best here to kind of parse out the best uses of each of these fields and forms of help. So I've heard this somewhere, and I really like this distinction, is like therapy and coaching, they're like a fork and a knife. They're two tools for different purposes and different results, right? And if we use the wrong one, we will feel frustrated. We won't get results. If I use a fork to try to cut something hard, I'm going to be frustrated, right? I want to use the knife for that instead to get the results of being able to cut that thing. So there's totally a time and a place for a therapist, and there's totally a time and a place for a marriage coach. And I'm going to be talking about marriage coaching and not all the other forms of coaching today, because that's what we're here for, right? Improving our marriages. So important thing to keep in mind is that either either modality, either thing, either form of help you turn to will require some tenacity from on your end if you want it to be effective, right? The approach in and of itself is not the only thing that determines your results with it. Okay. So it's not like either thing is a magic wand that the professional can wave over you and have it suddenly just be all the goals that you have around it accomplished, right? So the question is, if you're in pain or struggling, especially if you're in pain in your marriage, again, since this is the focus of this podcast, and you want help to get out of that pain and have a good marriage that you love, do you hire a marriage coach or a therapist? So I advocate coaching in more cases than not when it comes to improving a marriage. And I just want to put that up front. I get a lot of comments and emails about how therapy actually didn't work for them in their goals around having a better marriage, and how coaching actually with me made all the difference and changed their life in weeks and months in ways that therapy had not been able to do in years. Okay. And I'll share a bit about why I think this is so in a little while here, along with why it doesn't always make sense to go to a therapist for help in marriage. But first, I want to share about the times where therapy is the more useful option, is the right tool to turn towards. So therapy is particularly good, the way I see it, and from all my understandings, at 3 things. So I'm going to list them quickly and then I'm going to go into a little more depth. Therapy is really good at helping with mental health problems. Therapy is particularly good at helping healing trauma, particularly what we call big T trauma, as I talked about in the episode with Karen C.L. Anderson, episode 52. And the third area that it's particularly good for is kind of as a quick fix or what we might call a Band-Aid approach. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is addressing mental illness and mental health problems. So things like mental disorders, major depression, addiction, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, right? This is where long-term therapy can be incredibly helpful. And sometimes it's not, depending. Right? So this would be the case if you're struggling with bigger mental, emotional disorders, or your partner is. I would definitely point you towards a therapist if that's what's going on for one or both of you. I will get into more on how to distinguish this in a few minutes. The second area, again, is trauma. So I would call this active trauma, right? If you've experienced like something kind of that awful that happened, like abuse, or if you haven't dealt with it from your childhood, right, or are currently in an aggressive or abusive relationship, wow, therapy is really good for this, right? It can help. This is also like if you have obvious repercussions from a major accident or something, violent or very, very disturbing like that. If you have PTSD that's currently majorly impacting your life, a trauma therapist can be good too. So I do have a side note here about coaching. If you have trauma, but it isn't like really rearing its head in a big way, coaches like me who have training in the mind-body connection and the nervous system healing can really help you support yourself and move through it. We would call this small trauma, because the truth is, like, all of us have small trauma. And again, go back to that episode 52 to learn a little bit more about this. But as coaches, we don't focus on healing trauma. Like, it's not our main objective. So it's not that life and marriage coaches don't work with people that have had trauma in the past, right? Of course, because most of us have, to larger or lesser degrees, but it is helping them move forward from that. Okay, so back to therapy. Therapy can be really great for really doing a deeper trauma healing if that is what you need. And especially if you find a therapist specifically trained in trauma healing. Not all will be. So keep that in mind. All right, the third place that I think therapy can be really useful is, like I said, for a quick fix. If you want out of pain super quickly, like if there's one issue that you are having, you might consider hiring a couples counselor or psychotherapist, right? It can, with a really good therapist, be that quick fix. Like if you've reached an impasse on, say, one issue, I don't know, like if you have a big argument that's just like you just want some help resolving it, that might be a good choice. But it's not going to be the long-term solution or really give you the skill set you need to have a great marriage overall, right? You won't learn the tools to be able to soothe and shift and choose your feelings, or to keep love and affection at the heart of your experience, and to communicate lovingly and openly, or all the other skills that make a marriage fulfilling and amazing. So, like, it's totally fine if you're looking for that quick fix. Couples counselor or therapist might be a good choice for this. Kind of like a Band-Aid can help heal, right? A cut, but they're not going to heal like a broken bone or like the whole body and make it amazing, right? Band-Aids do have power. So, to help with that little cut. So to kind of reiterate, sort of in a different way, if you're struggling with just day-to-day life, if you're like not able to get your kids to school on time or get up out of bed or keep a job or like all of those basics, that's a great like tip for yourself that you're leaning more towards needing a therapist than a coach. And if you've had like a recent crisis or traumatic incident in your life and you're kind of reliving it or feeling stuck in that could be a really good pointer that, a counselor, a therapist might be better, and not someone in the coaching field. And if you just have a small impasse, again, like an argument you want to move beyond, couples counseling might be a good quick option if you find a good therapist. And again, not all are qualified for this. And I'll get more into this in a moment. So that's really important to understand. Don't just assume because they're called a therapist or a counselor that they're going to be able to help you with issues in your marriage. Not the case. If you are generally able to function and you're ready for a brighter future in your marriage and really in general, coaching is totally a great option. But here's the thing. Most people don't follow these guidelines and they end up frustrated and unable to achieve the results they want. And then they say, well, I tried all this in the past and nothing worked. And they think that nothing will work in the future. This is such a mistake. Because what's really happened here is that they went to the wrong professional. They went to the wrong field. Most often, they went to a therapist when what they needed was a coach. In other words, they tried eating spaghetti with a knife, right? Or cutting their steak with a fork, right? Of course it didn't work. They just had the wrong tool. It's not that nothing will work, right? We just need to pick up the knife to cut the steak or the fork to eat the spaghetti, or the spoon, right? That works with spaghetti too. So I see this mostly with people going to therapists when coaching was the better choice. Coaches, I want to point this out. This doesn't happen as often with coaches because coaches are very clear about referring you to a therapist if they feel that would suit you better, and if what they think is going on for you is beyond the scope of coaching, right? We're really clear about that as coaches. But lots of people go to therapists for their marriage and relationship issues because so many people just have the association that a therapist is where you take your kind of mental, emotional issues, marriage issues, right? And I think also because coaching isn't a household word quite yet, as it's a newer field. So people end up choosing therapy when it's not actually what in their best interest, just because it's all they know to choose, right? But therapists, this is important. Therapists often don't necessarily study relationships or how to thrive in relationships very much. They are not always trained very specifically like I am. They don't take targeted relationship training courses. And some take none at all, right? They're trained in a more general way. They're trained specifically to help with mental disorders and taking people from mentally very unwell back to decent or well. Okay? In a very general sense, right? They're trained to look at and diagnose mental disorders and mental illness. That's their main focus, right? And moving people from that unwell, unfunctioning place to decent or functioning, right? Whereas coaching is about specifically creating results, not dealing with crises. So another simple way of sort of distinguishing this is therapy in the most basic sense is to get you to baseline, and coaching is to get you way past baseline. A marriage coach like me has trained specifically on relationship dynamics and marriage functionality, right? And thriving. Really what works to help take their marriages from okay or not great to thriving. Now, I of course can't speak for all coaches, but I do see a big part of my role as a coach as being to help you develop all the skills and mental, emotional savvy to guide your marriage and yourself into being the best it can be, right? To helping you learn to be a very masterful operator of the technology you came with, you were born with, your brain and your nervous system, right? Getting the operator's manual and learning how to operate this beautiful mind, body, heart system that you are, right? So that you can intentionally guide your marriage and your life into being the best it can be. So if you're struggling in your relationship and you want to majorly improve it, to me, what you want is a relationship coach. Coaching is about getting results, about setting goals, and you can get really specific about what it is that you're wanting to have, to the goals that you want to reach. And then it's about moving from where you are currently, things being hard, things being unfulfilling, right? To reaching that goal, right? If you're in an intimate relationship and you're dealing with relationship challenges, a coach is about working with a coach is about working towards accomplishing what those goals for a really good and loving and supportive relationship, whatever your goal is, over a period of time, right? It's not a quick Band-Aid fix. It's kind of like a fitness coach, right? If you were to go to a fitness coach, you don't expect one day or 1 week at the gym is going to set you up for being fit for the rest of your life, right? A coach shows you exactly where you need to put consistent effort in to grow and learn to reach your marriage and emotional well-being goals, right? We hold you accountable. We give you the map and the tools to get you there. A therapist generally does not have a map and is not so results-oriented, so future-oriented. They're more often past-oriented, which again has its place. So coaches also, at least many of the ones that I know, guide you and teach you to guide yourself. So you end up relying on your own self and the skills that you develop instead of relying endlessly on a professional, right? I don't want you to be dependent on me forever. Whereas therapy is often based on a model that expects you to go see them regularly for years and years and forever, right? In other words, a somewhat dependent relationship. That's not at all my goal as a coach. I want you to be empowered to, eventually learn how to guide yourself and sort of almost be your own powerful coach. And that's what I teach you to do. As a highly sensitive person coach, I also make sure you're getting all your emotional agency skills to a really high level so that you're always in charge of how you feel. Right? I talk about that a lot if you've been listening to the podcast. Right? Instead of feeling like your emotions and happiness are contingent on what your partner does or says. Right? So a coach will challenge you to be your best self. We challenge and interrupt patterns of thinking and ways of being that aren't working for you, in your marriage or even just in your life in general, right? The future focus work that we do really helps the brain to reprogram and helps you build patterns that support a marriage that actually gets better and better over time. Now, I just want to go into a little bit of like a warning about therapy. Though again, of course it has its place and is beautiful for what it excels at. Therapy truly does have a downside, especially when it comes to marriage healing, because again, it can oftentimes be like picking up the fork when what you actually need is a knife. So many therapists are taught, if they do take some relationship specific training, they're taught to have the couple that they're working with, if they're working with a couple, right, share the problems they're having and the needs that they want their partner to meet with each other, right? I've heard multiple therapists themselves say that therapy can just become a place to go to vent. So couples will go and vent in front of each other about all the things that are wrong with each other, and then they'll kind of come up with this list of things their partner needs to do differently and ways they need to show up and support, them. And then, the counselor advises the other partner who didn't make the list, right, to get to work meeting them and vice versa. Does that make sense? So each person presents a list to the other, basically. I mean, it might not literally look like this, but this is basically the idea behind it. And then expects the other partner to start getting to work to meet those needs and desires. So there are many reasons why I don't recommend these two things, venting and focusing on all that's going wrong. Not that there's not a place for sharing that. There absolutely is in coaching as well. And I also don't encourage or why I think it doesn't work to have this list of needs that we then present and expect our partner to meet, right? So the first reason is that venting to each other, even in front of a professional, is not the path to solving anything. Venting often simply reinforces the problem. Although, like I just said, it is a good thing to be able to share once, at most twice, whether that's with our partner or just with a professional or a friend even, like what's bothering us, right? Like it's a good way to clean out our psyche a little bit, right? But if we keep reiterating all of those thoughts of the past and the wrongdoings, what we're doing is just training our brain to keep these things alive in the current moment. It literally creates neural pathways in our brain that make us go to that negative place and feel awful quicker and more often. This is neuroscience, which I won't get too much further into right now. So these kinds of sessions can become like venting sessions, he said, she said sessions with no solutions and no paths forward laid out. And as you may or may not have heard me say, you can never have the love you want when you're focusing on what the other or even yourself is doing wrong. So I've had plenty of clients who started coaching with me either while they were also going to a counselor or therapist, or had just recently come from one. And what they what various people have told me is that they would oftentimes feel worse and more upset with each other, with their partner, after these sessions. And again, this is because regurgitating grievances does not create love, connection, and solutions to issues. And it does not move you forward into a brighter future together. So another big reason that these approaches are problematic is that when we have this list of needs and we put this demand to meet our personal emotional needs onto our partner, it turns love into what feels like a duty or an obligatory kind of way of relating, like a job, right? And it sucks the relationship of love and passion and fun. And the truth is, the other person is not where our emotions actually come from anyway. This is, despite what you may have been really tricked into thinking by our culture, right? We're taught other people's actions create our feelings. It's not true. How we relate to other people's actions is where our emotions come from. And I won't lay it all out here. If you've been listening to this podcast, you're getting some ideas about this, right? You're learning this. But our emotions are our own domain. We are the ones who control them, who influence them, who guide them, who are in charge of them, who create them. We are, right? So coaches teach you how to be in charge of them and your experience in your marriage, right? At least coaches like me who address the source of the issues, which is always our lack of understanding how to guide our thinking and feeling, right? Like our lack of understanding how to be in charge of all of that instead of feeling at its mercy. Okay. So the therapist approach that I've just been sharing, which I want to be clear is not always the approach that any given therapist will take. It's just a very common one, right? This approach can be detrimental and it definitely can be disempowering, right? I see so many women who feel very disempowered even after years of therapy, right? This approach does not allow you as a woman to harness your power to be your best self and guide your marriage in the best direction. And it really just doesn't solve the right problem. So on a personal experience note, I myself have gone to a few therapists over the years when things were hard with my first husband, particularly then. And it really just didn't help at all with our marriage issues. And it actually led me down a path that actually made me more unhappy with him. It brought more unhappiness with my partner. And this is really common with this approach that we've just been talking about. That's so common with therapists and counselors. So I now totally believe that this could have been averted had I had a marriage coach or even known there was such a thing and learned about more about it and gotten some coaching back then. Many of my clients have had similar experiences. And because of that, they were hesitant to try coaching because of their not so good experiences in therapy. But they're so very glad they did because it worked. Because it did and does work. The way that I coach and many coaches coach is really focused on you. Right? This is different than the therapist approach, right? Because you cannot ever change someone else, as you've heard me say a lot in this podcast. That's their job to change themselves, right? And so to reiterate, to be really clear, one reason couples counseling has such inconsistent results is it's often about trying to get the other person to change or focusing on all they're doing wrong. This does not inspire anyone to change when they're feeling like they're the one doing things wrong and you really want them to change, right? It often gets met with more resistance, right? As I've talked about a lot. Unless, of course, your partner is really open to change. Coaching, on the other hand, empowers you to grow, along with helping you to communicate in a way that's received really well and most likely to inspire and influence the kinds of changes that you do want. Coaching helps you model change, right? Be the leader of love. Model the change you want, which is inspiring. Totally, right? That's where our realm of influence really is. So when clients come to me and tell their partner they're doing this coaching because they want to improve their marriage and their marriage means so much to them, the shifts are often instant, not just in themselves, but in their partner. Yeah? Because he's like, oh, she really means this. She's serious. She cares about us. And he feels honored and often inspired to step up and do some work himself. And when clients continue to show up in new ways with ownership in all the things I teach, the positive changes compound, right? And they continue to move him. They kind of carry him along in their wake, right? And this is when the positive snowball effect often kicks in. And then you have two people on board working to improve things, which really escalates the rate and the depth of change. So I hope that's helpful so far. I do have a couple less things that I suggest that you keep in mind when you're deciding what the right help is for you. So the first one is, a question to consider, which is, does this person, this professional, have the results that you want yourself? Has she or he lived and created what you want to live and create yourself? So as a coach, this is a top priority to me. I live the tools daily, and I've created and continue to prioritize creating an ever more amazing marriage myself. I have created one, yeah? So I know the way intimately. Whereas I know so many therapists and couples counselors who have very unhappy marriages or even a string of divorces. So the question is, do you want to learn from them? Or do you want to learn from someone who already knows the way and has what you want to have? If you are on the fence, so this is the second thing I want to offer here. If you're on the fence about, therapist, coach, this person or that person, you just might want to consider it if you have a sense of like, oh, this person resonates with me. There's something here in this person for me or not, right? You want to kind of be open to choosing somewhat based on a genuine pull towards them. And we might just call that an intuitive sense of that this person could be good. This way could be good for me. Yeah. Because of course you want to like and be open to the person you've chosen to help you. That's so important. All right. So I hope that's given you some much more clarity about what might be right for you when it comes to seeking professional help. And I do want to also add that sometimes people choose to do both, to work with both a coach and a therapist at the same time, but for different reasons. And that can be really great. That can be really supportive of both of your goals. So that's an option too. If you're intrigued by my approach and coaching sounds more like a fit for you, and you're wondering if I can help you, I have a blog post actually that's called Wondering If I Can Help You that I'm going to put the link to in the show notes. It talks about different scenarios I can help with. So whether that's you're married or you're not yet married, but you want to strengthen your relationship before you get married, etc. So go check that out. And in there, I do talk about how, although I focus on helping you as the woman in your marriage, because there's so much beautiful room to grow and so much that can change from that work, I also now offer a package that includes your willing partner, right? Where you both learn to be the steward of your emotions and experience and really learn how to show up with the love and sensitivity and support that you both want. So if you have that, or if your partner isn't on board to do the change work right now, either way, I've got you. And I'd love to coach with you if it sounds like coaching is more the right fit for you than therapy. And all it takes to take a step forward is to set up a consult. Now, please note, there is a growing wait list for coaching with me. So what that means is don't be discouraged. It just means don't wait, right? Start the process now so you can begin making and reaping the changes that you want in your marriage as soon as possible. To get started, you can just go to the link in the show notes to work with me or set up a consult. Or you can head over to my website, www.lifeisworthloving.com, and click the Work With Me button or the Get Started with a Call button, and it will be self-explanatory from there. All right, my friends, I hope this has been helpful and illuminating, and may you be oh so